Passengers arriving to the UK from countries on the travel ban list will have to quarantine from the 15th of February.
The government, though, is being accused of risking lives with the delay in implementing the measure, drawing criticism from both Labour and the travel industry. Foreign Office Minister James Cleverly joins us now this morning. Morning, Mr Cleverly. Thank you for joining us this morning. Lots of people will be saying, look, we heard this announcement 10 days ago. You're not going to implement it for another 10 days. I think by the time it eventually gets implemented, someone was saying that will be 50 days since the South African variant landed on UK shores. It's just too little, too late. What do you say to them?
Well, you've got to remember that this is part of a package of measures. It's not the only thing that we're doing to protect ourselves at borders. We already insist that people have a negative test result before they fly to the UK.
Well, that's only come in for the last few weeks, Mr Cleverly, hasn't it? That hasn't been in place for that long, really.
But we're already saying people shouldn't be flying unless there are very specific reasons. We've tightened up the reasons why people are flying. We've had an insistence that people coming from countries with a high prevalence of COVID self-isolate. And we have already put in place measures whereby people who don't have a right to fly here or reside here can be turned away at the borders and indeed fined. So this hotel quarantine measure is adding to an existing list of measures that we have put in place to protect ourselves at the borders.
Sorry, Charlotte. One of the things about that is, though, the number of people that are actually self-isolating, because the policing of people self-isolating when they come back from somewhere or they've been somewhere that is a COVID hotspot has been very, very lax. And also those figures of sending people back to countries if they don't have a COVID test or a negative test that they can prove. Can you tell us how many people have actually been sent back to their country of origin?
I don't have those. I don't have that figure at my fingertips. And the idea is that what we're saying...
Because it's negligible, and actually that hasn't happened very much, because the numbers with regards to how many people, I think 332, up to the 17th of January, 332 fixed penalty notices were issued by police forces for those in England failing to self-isolate after arriving from a country in the UK government quarantine list. We've got 20,000 people arriving a day. That's 332 fixed notice penalties. Now, there are lots of people clearly who are self-isolating, but do you think genuinely there are only 332 that have broken those self-isolation rules?
Well, as you say, the idea is our desire is not to give out lots of fixed penalty notices. Our desire is to encourage people to do the right thing, which is either not to fly in the first place or to quarantine when they do get here. But we do want to tighten up those measures in light of the new variants that we are seeing around the world. That's why we gave an initial notice to the hospitality industry last month that we were bringing this in. That's why more details have come out yesterday to give more specific details to the hospitality industry and a call for interest. And we're giving them notice to be able to prepare their hotels for this policy, which will come into force on the 15th.
It just seems to be very frustrating that there are a lot of people saying, you know, it's shutting the stable door after the horse has bolted. Not only was this announcement made late, but it seems that the details weren't agreed or arranged when the announcement was made. But actually, this should have been put in place months ago, because we've had people, as Ben's pointing out, pouring in the meantime, and whatever new strains have been coming round into the country, and it's just too little too late.
Well, I mean, I've been dealing, have other ministers in the Foreign Office. I've been dealing with our international friends and partners, explaining to them why we are putting travel restrictions in. And we've been making calls like that for months. So we have a regime of limiting travel for this. When we feel that that regime needs enhancing, as we do at the moment, we have put those enhancements in place. And what we hope, of course, is that, you know, people, our preferred option is that people take that personal responsibility. Where they're failing to do so, we have had to toughen up our measures, and that is what we are doing. But the main thing, of course, and the air industry will tell you this, is there has been a massive, massive reduction in international travel, and the UK has very severely limited the travel from places that have high prevalence of coronavirus.
Do you think, James Cleverly, had we had this hotel quarantine, if you land from another country, in place sort of at the end of the summer last year before we ended up coming out, or as we came out of the first lockdown, do you think we would have protected ourselves and protected our borders and protected the spread of the virus more clearly?
Well, my understanding, and I don't pretend to be an epidemiological expert. There are too many armchair experts in this field, as it is. But my understanding is that the response to changes, to the evolution and mutation of the virus, countries all around the world are having to deal with these new strains.
Yeah.
So it's not possible, and I don't think it's.
So you don't think we would have reduced the spread of the virus had these protocols been in place as we went into autumn last year?
Well, what we saw, my understanding of what we saw was not necessarily driven in the autumn and over Christmas from imported virus strains. Now, as I say, I'm not claiming to have the full epidemiological analysis, or I'm not a scientist, so frankly, I wouldn't even claim to be able to analyse those spreadsheets.
But what it feels like in its simplest terms, James Cleverly, if there's a correlation between the number of people coming into the country and if we were controlling that, some of those that may have a different variant or may have the coronavirus themselves, that if we're controlling that, that would control the spread of the virus. That seems like quite a simple comparison.
Well, one thing as a non-scientist I have learned is few things are as simple, and correlation does not prove causation. But the point I'm making is that we have always adapted our policies, guided by the science, in a way that we feel best addresses the impact of the virus. That's what we're doing here. We have enhanced our travel restrictions, and this is part of those enhanced border control measures that will help protect ourselves from viruses from overseas, whilst our vaccination programme helps us protect ourselves from the virus that's already here in the UK.
OK, well, something that would be good to clear up with you, talking about adapting policies. We heard from Nadine Zahawi almost a month ago now. He put on Twitter that there were no plans to introduce vaccine passports. We have no plans to introduce vaccine passports, he says here on Twitter. That was from January the 12th. And yet we read in the papers today, it's on the front page of the Times, government plans vaccine passports to allow holidays. And it says that British officials have started work on a vaccine passport idea. So could you clear this up for us? Is there going to be a vaccine passport system where people will be able to say, yes, I've had the vaccination, therefore I'm free to travel?
So what is really important that viewers understand is that every country sets its own rules about who it does or doesn't allow into its country. And so other countries around the world may decide that they accept people who have had proof of vaccinations. And as British officials always do, we work with our international partners so that we can understand their travel restrictions and immigration rules, so that we can inform British travellers. So we will always work with our international partners to understand what their rules, regulations and laws are, so that we can properly inform British travellers through our travel advice.
But there's no plan at the moment for our government to implement a vaccine passport to ensure you can travel where you like, or indeed for people coming into the UK? We
would just have to do it because other countries are implementing it.
Well, we wouldn't be able to dictate to other countries. We wouldn't be able to say to a British citizen, here's your record of vaccination, you can now go anywhere you like. That's not in our gift. That would have to be a decision made by those hosting countries themselves.
Can you envisage a moment where our government would say anybody that wants to come to the UK, though, will have to show that they've had the vaccine?
Well, we'll see what we have, what the situation is in the future. As I say, we'll be guided by the science. I'm not comfortable, I don't think it'll be particularly useful for me speculating about how exactly things may well be once vaccinations around the world have been rolled out. What I am very proud of is that the UK's domestic vaccination programme is world class, and that also through things like Gavi and COVAX, these international kind of organisations, we are also playing a leading part in making sure some of the poorest, most vulnerable people in the world are also able to get hold of that vaccine. As it's
the vaccine rollout has been a success till now. We know that the job is going about brilliantly. 10.4 million, we can see on the screen there, have had the vaccine. The one area I'm sure you are personally concerned with this as well, and we are talking about it as much as we can, is the lack of uptake within the BAME community when it comes to vaccine. The reticence to some members of that community towards having the vaccine. What are your thoughts on this, and how are the government best trying to tackle? We can see from that graph we're looking at there just the disparity between those three sectors we're looking at there, the white, the South Asian and the black communities. What are your concerns, and how are we going to combat that and try and get that uptake to increase?
Well, I think the initiative put forward by my good friend and colleague Kemi Badenoch as our Equalities Minister, and our cross-party work to produce a video, which was I think a really positive step, saying to the black community, the vaccines are extensively tested, they are safe, they are effective. You should absolutely take the vaccine when called to do so by the NHS, because it's the best way of protecting yourself, protecting your family, protecting your communities. And Kwasi Kwarteng, as the BEIS minister, who ultimately it's his department that can claim a huge amount of the credit, working with the NHS and industry, getting this rollout. He has been as vocal as anybody that this is absolutely the right thing to do. And I'm really glad that cross-party there is agreement that taking up this vaccine is absolutely the right thing to do for